Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. A pleasure to be able to speak to you. How are you doing today? All right?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. So maybe you could kick off with a brief introduction to this really fascinating and kind of slow burn thriller, I guess we could call it. Give us a brief synopsis of Here Before.
Here Before is a psychological drama about a woman called Laura, who's played by Andrea Riseborough. And she lives on the outskirts of Belfast with her family, and a new family move immediately next door. And the new family have a little girl, and Laura and the little girl strike up a friendship, and that connection really grows, and so does tension between the two families, and that's where the film kicks off from.
And I believe it's your debut feature. So maybe you can tell us a bit about the genesis of the project, the story. Where was the first seed of the idea, and why did you want this to be the story you tell for the first time on the big screen?
I think that the kernel of the idea had been with me for the longest time, probably since I was a kid, and was very interested in the paranormal and the metaphysical, those sorts of things. And I've always really enjoyed genre, but I've been very invested in sort of, psychological complexity. So it's funny, the idea lived with me for a long time, and I sat down to write a screenplay and I didn't quite know where it was going to lead me. And it turned into this sort of hybrid sort of genre thing. And then I realized it was very much Laura's film. And then development took place sort of from that point onwards. And yeah, as a first feature, finance came together relatively quickly. And we got Andrea on board, and here we are.
And speaking of Andrea, maybe you can tell us a bit about the casting process, and in particular, bringing her on for that leading role, because it's a very complex, sort of nuanced character to play, and she just does it so brilliantly. I mean, she's one of these actresses. You almost feel like maybe she's kind of gone, not been quite as appreciated as she could have been, because she's just done so much amazing work, and she brings so much to every role. So maybe tell us about the cast, but in particular, Andrea.
Totally. I mean, I couldn't agree more. She is. I think she's greatly admired. I think she's got a huge following, but I think because she's such a chameleon, and because she has increasingly played these very varied roles, sometimes I think you don't realize the breadth of places that she pops up. But I followed her career for the longest time, and when we were thinking about casting the film, it was a bit of a sort of pipe dream. It was like someone like Andrea Riseborough.
Yeah.
And then we just decided, look, why not aim high? And so I wrote to her. She took the time to read the script. She was into it. We met. And I couldn't be happier that we got to work together. I think she delivered such a beautiful job. I think she connected to the what I was trying to do with the piece, and to that character. And Andrea talks very eloquently about what draws her to people that she believes in, people that she understands, and she brought all of that groundedness and authenticity to the role.
And I was even thinking, probably you saw it, that episode she did of Black Mirror, and I don't know why that was kind of springing to mind watching this film. Particularly, I guess I feel like the film keeps you guessing of kind of, is she sort of someone we're supposed to have sympathy and empathy for, or at other times, is there a darker undercurrent? Is she going to turn into the villain in some way? So I thought that was particularly where the nuance really came through.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes without saying that we are getting better at representing, particularly female characters in all their complications and complexity. And I think that this film definitely skirts around some grey areas. And for me, like, that is where life lives. So, the film doesn't judge. I don't think I judge, and I don't think Andrea judged coming into it. And that's a really important thing, I think, to communicate and leave space for an audience. How would anyone behave in those circumstances? We all behave so differently under the pressures of, big things like love and grief and loss. So, absolutely.
And can you tell us a bit about the rest of the cast as well, and in particular, like the child actors who, I just think it's phenomenal when people so young can give such incredible performances. So, how did you decide on the rest of the cast?
Well, I worked with a casting agency called Carla Strong Company, and they have a real great tendrils into, you know, various parts of Northern Ireland and Belfast. And I was really excited about that part of the process. So quite early on, I was like, let's find our Megan. They were like, don't try and find her too early because she'll be 15 by the time we start to shoot. But the kids, you know, the kids were great. And then when we found Neve, who plays Megan, you know, again, it sounds a little bit like a sort of, you know, cliche story, but, you know, she really did just jump out as someone who hadn't really had much experience, but just really had this incredible presence. She had this really unusual combination of being at once a child and so sweet and funny, but also had this sort of worldly head on her shoulders and really understood, you know, what we were talking about and what we were asking for. And also has this very rare quality of stillness in front of the camera. And then Lewis McCaskey, who plays Tag, the older brother, similarly, you know, he just has just something very natural, and that very much speaks to my approach to filmmaking. I like to work with performers who feel very open and very live, you know, and we would try and keep things fresh when we were shooting as well. So there's a little bit of, you know, improv material in there, and again, it just builds this feeling of a world that we really believe.
Mm. It also seemed like the locations were very specific because you kind of managed to make everything feel incredibly realistic. You know, like nothing looks like a set. Everything just really looks very sort of like your average kind of suburban homes. Absolutely. Going into the school. But then there's always a twist on everything, you know, whether it's the music or the angle of the camera, which, you know, gives us that feeling of unease. So yeah, how did you use the locations and the way you shot them?
Well, that's exactly right. That was the approach. It was I was very invested in the idea of defamiliarizing the familiar. So I wanted to make it feel like this could be any neighborhood, this could be any family. I'm from like a working class, rural, urban area. I love the bins being put out. Do you know what I mean? I love the cycle of everyday life. And how do you just put that on its side a little bit? You know, everything was invested with a language of strangeness. And that very much was to put an audience in the place of what Laura's experiencing. And also, I think, you know, I am very interested in the idea that there are multiple levels of experience going on at once. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the sort of potential and the possibility of that. So that was very much layered into the design of the film. Mm.
And there does seem, I don't like to use the word trend because maybe that sounds like a bit like fickle, but there definitely seems to be a lot of female film directors making these kind of psychological thrillers or sort of genre-bending films. And it just seems that it's a very sort of fertile medium to be able to explore particularly kind of the complexity of women's experience and subjects like trauma, loss, how we process grief. And so I just wondered if you saw your film kind of within that realm and why you think that it's become so popular.
It's really interesting you should say that. I am aware of there being a real wave of genre female, you know, filmmakers, and that's fascinating. And I you know, in an interesting way, I don't quite think this film fits there because it is a psychological drama that definitely has horror or thriller elements. And I don't know the answer to that, perhaps except that these characters and voices and female directors have been a bit shut out of that genre for such a long time. We've got so much to say, and it's really exciting to see it subverted and turned on its head and explored and interrogated. And we've got loads of just incredibly astute, intelligent, creative people finally getting to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we're just sort of reaping the reward of that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, of course, to be in any way part of that is, you know, pretty awesome. So, mm-hmm. You know, it's really exciting to look around and see so many debut features as well, and you know, really taking on genre and, as you say, hybrid genre.
Mm. And you know, what do you think people will take away from watching it? Because I think it is fascinating to look at how people try and deal with loss and kind of that thing of, you know, when you're struggling with mental health, losing your kind of connection with reality, and even something that seems very simple and straightforward, you know, picking the kids up from school, you can feel kind of that disconnect to sort of everyday life.
I think what's interesting to me is also that I didn't set out to make a film about grief and trauma. And I think there has been a lot of that, you're right. And so in many ways, it feels like it fits in that, you know, in that category. And it's clearly part of the texture of the film, but at the same time, I think very much it's a film about love and about strength. And I think that Laura is, you know, that she's cobbling a way forward with her family. And that was always incredibly important to me from the beginning through to the end, that we have that sense. And also we've seen a lot of the kind of crazy, broken down mental health issue, you know, women struggling. And I think even what Andrea brought to the performance of Laura is incredibly grounded, and actually at almost every point the audience are really kind of with Laura, you know, they're experiencing what she's experiencing. So rather than, I guess, feel like the world is telling Laura that she's crazy, we're kind of there with her going like, but hold on, you know. So I hope that it you know, it feels like I say, like a sort of more complex representation of that experience.
And I just also wanted to ask about the fact that it's set obviously in Northern Ireland. And is that sort of important to you as well? Maybe we don't have enough stories that are set there, and, you know, working, I don't know how many of the actors already had the accent or you were having to work with them, but, you know, is that important to you as well, kind of in terms of representation?
It's amazing. I mean, I cannot tell you the impact that it has to see yourself represented, and of course not to see yourself, to not be visible, to not be heard. And growing up, the only representations we really had, especially if you're working class from Northern Ireland, was the Troubles. And there are many, many stories still to be told from that, you know, from that time. And yet at the same time, like, what else is there? How do we push forward? So, you know, it was really, I'm really proud to put the film out there and hear those voices and have all that cultural specificity and context. And everyone apart from Andrea was Northern Irish, and she nailed the accent.
Yeah, totally.
She's an absolute legend. But yeah, that's really meaningful for me. And again, on a smaller scale, to feel like I'm away, you know, Kathy Brady's just had Wildfire out and done really, really well. And so it's really exciting again, even from Northern Ireland, to feel like there's this real wave of creativity and you know, and fresh representation.
And just very quickly, do you know what you're going to be working on next? Because obviously it was your first feature. Have you got another one in mind, or are you going in a different direction?
Yeah, I'm working on my my next feature at the moment. And I've also just come off directing a block of TV for a new HBO show called The Baby, which will be out quite soon. So that was amazing because the turnaround was so quick. But now on to the second feature, and yeah, really excited about that.
Amazing. Well, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you. Thank you so much, and congratulations on this incredible film. Can't wait for everyone else to see it.
Thanks so much. Lovely chatting.
Lovely to chat to you. Thanks, Stacey.
All right, take care.
Thanks.